Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video, I'll be reviewing the DM's Guild adventure, The Shanty of Boldbeard's Pride by Jimmy Meritt for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your DM's Guild shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Shout out to my platinum patrons, Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick, and Rodney, and gold patrons, RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy Numa, Marcos de Vicente, Gilberto, Sean A.K., Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, and Sam. Thank you all very much for your support. You might be asking yourself, Eric, why are you doing all these pirate-based adventures? It's October right now. And my answer is, well, that's where I am with my review schedule right now. I am now getting to reviews in October that I received last summer, which was closer to when Ghosts of Saltmarsh actually came out. So if you're noticing a reoccurring theme here, that is why, which means, yeah, it'll probably be January by the time I'm reviewing the stuff that I am getting right now. So that's a look at how many reviews requests I am getting and how big my list is. But I'm glad that I finally got to the Shanty of Boldbeard's Pride because it is a pretty cool adventure. It is full of lots of pirate theming, which I think the pirate theme is always very fun. It's very pulpy. It tends to be kind of lighthearted, swashbuckling adventure that jives very, very well with what most people look at D&D as being. Obviously, some folks want to do more of a dramatic turn with the storytelling. Some folks want to be more hardcore with the rules and the combat, but I think everybody can enjoy some good old lighthearted adventures that a lot of pirate style adventuring and stories tend to bring. This one is designed for level 5. It is about 40 pages long, but maybe about 30 pages total of content, along with some stat blocks and some handouts. Really impressed with the level of presentation that's provided here, as well as the artwork. We get full color battle maps, which is awesome. And like I said, it uses the pirate theme very, very well. In fact, if you enjoy references to popular pirate stories and video games, such as The Goonies and The Secret of Monkey Island and those kind of things, then I think you will get a kick out of this very much so, especially Goonies, because it's pretty much the entire third act is a dungeon crawl with even your very own sloth hill giant character. So that's pretty fun. So you can tell right now, if your party would enjoy that kind of thing, I think they would get a kick out of this adventure. If they want something a bit more serious, then maybe not so much. But I think it fits very well with what most people are looking for with D&D. And also, I think it's a unique take on combining ship-based adventuring, which would be Ghosts of Saltmarsh, but obviously any campaign, which can include ship-based adventuring, and the Underdark. So you specifically go into the Underdark, into the Dark Lake, into the Sunless Sea, and you do the whole Underdark thing, and then you meet a ship that's full of all the cool monstrous creatures from the Underdark. That's a really cool concept and a neat combination of I guess Ghosts of Saltmarsh and Out of the Abyss in terms of the themes and the locations and the setting. So that's I think a really cool treat to see that as well. This one also has some really cool art within it, which is all very cartoony. I'm just going to skip through so you can see some of the artwork here. And again, I think this fits very well with the more lighthearted pirate theme here, especially when it's more, Goonies based. Even something like Pirates of the Caribbean, though, I think like the movie is very much a lighthearted, almost family movie, in a way. And so I think this artwork fits very well. Now, if this were like a gothic horror adventure or something, then I wouldn't want to see this kind of art necessarily. But I really like seeing it here, especially when it's original art. At least I think it's original art for these characters that are introduced. And yes, they have a quartermaster mind flayer. There's a chief of security gelatinous cube. There's an Etten, which of course both heads don't get along. The actual captain is a Sahuagin. Absolutely really cool. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So part 1, which is a really cool adventure hook. It's that the players just kind of end up going to this pop-up tavern that includes the last survivor of a crew of pirates that had been defeated by another crew, which was the one I was just describing, the monstrous one. And the players have a chance to earn a magical map that will take them to the ship, which is Boldbeard's Pride, as well as, and then the ship can take them, and the ship, which contains still the ghost of that captain, can take them to the dungeon, which is full of a mithril vein worth lots and lots of money. A good old fashioned treasure hunt. And I love this adventure hook actually includes not only an entire actual shanty, which is included in MP3 form, as well as a URL to a YouTube video, which has literally people singing this very full. It's like a 2-minute long song. It is one of the most I've seen products include maybe atmospheric tracks before, but nothing to this level. This is really kind of impressive and cool. And I love that they incorporate Liar's Dice into the actual adventure hook. Really, part one, and a lot of stories, the adventure hook is just a paragraph or two, whereas here it is the entire first part is literally just trying to get this surviving crew member to hand over the map. But of course, he's a good old fashioned pirate, and he wants to play a game of Liar's Dice with the players, which is described here. And cheating is encouraged through the use of skill checks. So it combines a mini game, which Liar's Dice is a great game, by the way, for anybody that hasn't played it. It's just a really good social game that has been around for ages. Social bluffing and like social deduction game. So it's fun, but you also use skill checks to be able to incorporate certain lying feats, such as sleight of hand, to change your dice and all that kind of thing. And the funny thing is, if he catches you cheating, the first time he does it, he's impressed because they're pirates. They cheat all the time. And then if you do it more and more, then he makes you ante in more gold to be able to stay in the game. But the idea is, of course, for the players to eventually win. But I just think that's a neat idea to just go a little bit further instead of just giving the players the quest right off the bat and having it just be a single paragraph, but really involve the players in the adventure and get them caught up in the theme. And it mentions that in the text, like, hey, get your players role playing because we're about to hit a huge role playing moment. And sure enough, you sure as hell are. The only downbeat of this entire adventure to me is that when you get the map and you're journeying into the Underdark to go, I guess you go to the Dark Lake first, and then that empties out into the actual Sunless Sea, which is this giant underground, really ocean, for lack of a better word. And you're supposed to do 5 skill checks, and for every one that and they can be different things, which is nice. Athletics, roll harder, charisma, intimidate one of your fellow crewmates. You're on a little rowboat at that point because you can't have your ship go down in there. And if you fail, you're just supposed to run a encounter. You're just supposed to roll this D12 and then run an encounter. And every single one of these is a combat encounter, and there's no description or anything there. So it seems kind of a cop out to just say like, well, just run this random fight. I mean, picture if you fail, 2 or 3 or 4 of these in a row, your party just has bad luck on the skill checks. You're running a lot of just bullshit random combat encounters that just feel like it's really going to drag things down. So I don't mind the idea of having a table of encounters pop up for failure, but I think you need to not have all of them be combat. You need to have some of them be like, okay, here's a saving throw for, I don't know, just exhaustion mainly, or some like trap is triggered, or you end up going on rocks and somebody falls in and just takes damage. Just you can have consequences like traps or something, a saving throw for damage instead of just straight up combat. So I would have liked to see a little bit more variety here, or saving that, give me full on descriptions of some of these in terms of maybe some of them aren't necessarily combat encounters. There might be some role playing or some skill checks involved from there. So that's kind of the only bummer, especially because a lot of the other stuff is so good about expanding on all the role-playing options. So here in part 2, the Boldbeard's Pride, which the players get picked up by this very cool, monstrous Underdark ship of Underdark denizens. So the Captain Darkwater is a Swagan Baron. He's got a first mate, Jiven Starkscream, which might be going a bit too far as the mutinous first mate, right-hand person being Starkscream. And I'm a big Transformers fan, but the references might be a little too on the nose. Is a drow. The bosun is, of course, the ship ghost of Boldbeard, who's still around. Quartermaster Mind Flayer. Surgeon is a Darrow serial killer. And then the cook is one of the heads of the Eden. There's as I mentioned, a security. The chief of security is a gelatinous cube, which is hilarious. Their scout is a Kuatoa who just goes ahead and ships and swims through the sea to kind of scout ahead what's ahead. Just a really great, fun crew. You can instantly picture if your players are going to enjoy this or not in terms of are they going to want to immediately role play with these fascinating characters, which there are some nice descriptions involved. in kind of like basically what their motivations are and what they're doing with this crew and all that. I do think that's a lot of fun. Or are they the kind that's just going to attack this crew straight up? If that's the case, there are options for that, which I'll give credit for the designer to saying, hey, if your party wants to attack the crew, then just let them, and here's how it's going to basically play out. But I don't think the adventure works nearly as well as it does if they end up joining the crew and really get into the role-playing nature of it, because I think these can be a fun characters. So assuming they join the crew, or at least try to, their first test is to fight a battle against this other rival Underdark gang, and they literally fight on the ship, and the other crew members all just kind of cheer them on, and so the players win that fight. Then their goal, once they officially join the crew, should be to try to inspire a mutiny. Now, here's the interesting part. Instead of you trying to inspire a bunch of people to mutiny against just the captain and take over, you really want them to mutiny against just each other. So you want them to end up in certain camps. And then, so the idea is to basically have them fight each other so they'll thin their own numbers out, and then the players can turn around and take out what's left. So it's an even more insidious mutiny. It's played out maybe not quite as well as I was hoping, but I'm not going to knock the adventure for that, because it does still take out a lot of room relative to the adventure. It basically boils down to using a series of skill checks. You can use insight to determine which camp, which side the notable pirate will lean, either for the captain or against the captain, basically. And you can kind of determine that through an insight check. And then investigation will determine what you can do that will lean that character towards the aggressive state. And once they are in the aggressive state, then they're basically ready to throw down a mutiny. And this section ends once everybody has moved to the aggressive state. So the idea, I think, here is so that each party member kind of goes to their own person and tries to do a thing to make sure that person is ready to fight their fellow crew members. So again, if you think your players are going to be very fun and enjoy that aspect, then I think this is going to go very, very well. Otherwise, it's going to boil down to basically a bunch of skill checks and maybe not be nearly as enjoyable, or just put that much more pressure on the DM to kind of pick up the slack in terms of making these more enjoyable. So you really have to determine how much your players, and maybe not all your players, are going to be down with it, which is nice that there are some skill check options. But I would have liked maybe some options for like mini quests here or something, like maybe some of the different crew members, you have to do something else, which it is kind of mentioned there, but it's not really mentioned about what the players can specifically do in terms of, I don't know. It's just, I feel like this section could have been expanded a little bit further. There's a part I'm trying to find, for example, with the Mind Flayer. Okay, so a successful investigation check lets characters learn that Squiggles, the Quartermaster Mind Flayer, is growing 4 intellect devourers in his room with the intention of slowly replacing the Dwerger crew. Killing the devourers or informing the captain so he does it and disciplines Squiggles will make him switch to aggressive. That's just like a single sentence, but obviously that could be like a whole big part of the adventure, is all the players getting together trying to do that. So I would have liked to have those kind of things been like more bigger quests with multiple paragraphs explaining them, rather than just have it be like a single sentence. They're like, oh yeah, the players can do this, seemingly big thing in order to convince this one pirate. So it kind of goes over, it really leans towards a quantity over quality approach when it comes to the mutiny, in terms of, hey, here's all the different people you have to convince, and here's the things you can do, rather than expanding on each one. But I'm not going to necessarily knock the adventure for that, because it's a cool part of the adventure, and it is still given a pretty good amount of treatment here. I also love that there are 3 different methods to running the actual mutiny, because obviously having a lot of DM-controlled characters is always a very tricky thing to handle when you still want to have the players be the stars of the show. And it really does a good job of breaking down, hey, go with whatever one your players want, and even tell them, like, here are the different methods that we can employ to do this. What do you feel most comfortable or you think would be the most enjoyable? It gives 3 main methods. One of them is just to run it as is, which is the players play themselves, and the DM runs all the different characters. And, the pro is that it's the most fair. Technically, it's how things should run according to the rules. Rules is raw. And but the con is that the DM ends up obviously running a lot of stuff, and you end up kind of fighting against yourself, because there's a lot of NPCs on the board. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because the Etten is 2. So it's 8 different wildly different creatures the DM is running, just attacking each other, basically. Method 2 is the players can control the pirates, which I think is a really, really neat idea, to where I would probably combine methods 1 and 2 because maybe some player characters specifically want to join the fight. Like maybe a rogue wants to be able to sneak in and do some sneak attacks as themselves. So maybe they don't want to necessarily play one of the characters, but other ones might want to stay back, especially because the idea is you want the pirate NPCs to fight each other. So certain player characters will definitely want to stay back and let things unfurl, in which case I would definitely give them a character sheet and be like, all right, here's what you get to do. And I think that would be a pretty memorable method. The third method is really interesting and one that I hadn't even ever thought of doing, which is run it with just the players being against the other enemy team, but all the characters that they recruited to their side then gain like abilities that they can impose on the enemy. It's a really interesting concept. It's one that's a little bit too different for my taste, but maybe my players would like that. I don't know, but I like that it's in there. It's just interesting the way they broke up these different methods, because running a lot of DM creatures is always very tricky. And I'm glad that it wasn't just a throwaway sentence that was like, hey, if you want to break things up as a DM, you could always run your character or something. Instead, it's actually broken up between here's method 1 with multiple paragraphs, here's method 2, here's method 3, which, as you can see, takes up an entire page. So very, very well thought out and cool. And then finally, part 3. So they wrest control of the ship. They've defeated the remaining pirates. There's an odd part where the players just then turn on the rest of the pirates and defeat them. And then Boldbeard's ghost officially takes over the ship with the players and leads them towards the final dungeon. This is where things get very Goonies-like. By the way, I missed the references, but the Act 1, if I want to make sure I get them right, the bartender at the tavern is named Guybrush Threepwood. And well as all like the servers, LeChuck and Elaine, of course, all from the Secret of Monkey Island series, really fun LucasArts adventure series from the 90s. I missed that heyday of the adventure games. And then we are approaching let's see, was there any references in part 2? If there were, I might have missed them. I know Darkwater was a series in the 90s as well, a cartoon, I think, Pirates of Darkwater. So I don't know if any of those names, though I don't think I watched that show. There was a really great reference in part 3 to when the PCs first get to the dungeon. They go down and they find all the skeletons in the exact scene of that famous scene from the Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride, not the movie, although the movie also does this because it's obviously based on the ride, which is the skeletons all locked in a big kind of pirate repose of all their different animations, one of them chasing after a female pirate, and of course the classic one of the dog. I don't know why I said, I guess it's skeletons here, but it's meant to be pirates in the actual Pirates of the Caribbean ride. And then the dog with the key ring, and then the pirates like reaching for it out of the prison, which I believe is actually in the movie also, which is a reference to the exact part of the ride. I've been on that ride several times in my life. It's very funny and cool, and I like that they actually see that here. So that's just a really cool reference. And then, of course, a hill giant named Sloth who's really hungry. The whole thing is very Goonies from here on out. The dungeon is really lovely looking. I absolutely love this design, although it kind of resembles a skeleton with like a anchor penis here. But they meet. So the skeleton thing is with the Pirates of the Caribbean reference in Area 2. They meet a hill giant in 3, which is Sloth, who's really hungry. He's a vegetarian, which is fun. So again, you've even got role-playing in the dungeon, which is always cool to see. It's very, very light on combat, which is probably good because the players just did a bunch of combat in the part 2 with Boldbeard's ship. The only real combat encounters are a Dark Mantle fight in Area 8, and then the final battle, which is against a Stone Golem, which is a very challenging fight for level 5 PCs, but the Stone Golem specifically targets the person who has mined the most mithril. There's mithril deposits everywhere, and the players are meant to be mining these, and they won't even attack anybody unless the players have the mithril, and players can easily and really should befriend the Hill Giant who just wants to eat the mushrooms in the cave, although there's a funny bit where if the players feed him the wrong mushrooms, he becomes enraged and attacks the players. That could make things a lot more difficult if players are like, oh yeah, these mushrooms are fine, instead of actually rolling for checks, because the very first mushroom cluster you come across is, of course, not the right kind of mushrooms. They are poisonous mushrooms. So that's a really good twist on how you handle a potentially powerful NPC. You have to, I guess, vet their food for them. So that's really fun. So it's a neat little dungeon design, and it combines... Even this dungeon alone, I think, combines combat, exploration, role-playing pretty well, but then it's very role-playing heavy with some combat throughout the rest of the adventure. So it's really got everything. It's got the full-color maps. I'm really impressed with this adventure, and I love that it combines a lot of really fun references to other pirate adventures, and that it uses the Sunless Sea, which I don't think I've ever seen an adventure actually capitalize on this vast underground ocean that is a completely different ecosystem than normal, above ground pirate adventures in D&D. All right, let's go over my pros and cons. I can show you real quick the maps. And yes, it does come with separate grid and gridless maps as separate pictures, so you can use these. But you actually get a really, really cool battle map of the ship. And yes, this ship is shaped like a giant insectoid and even comes with some cool bits. The fact that it can, I believe, see through darkness and expel dark vision around it. And it just comes with some neat magical enhancements to where your players really feel like they earn a magical ship vessel. So it could be extremely useful for any ship-based campaign as well. All right, pros and cons for the Shanty of Boldbeard's Pride. Pro, it's a unique setting that combines pirate themes within the Underdark and the Sunless Sea. Pro, it has excellent balance of combat, exploration, and role-playing, the three pillars of Dungeons and Dragons. Pro, I love the Liar's Dice. It's a fun way to make the PCs work for the adventure hook. The entire part one is basically just an adventure hook. It's here's what you need to do to make this adventure get started, but we're going to make you play Liar's Dice and have fun and cheat with it and do all that just to get the adventure started. Pro, the monster's crew is full of fun characters, and there are multiple methods for handling the mutiny, which is really nice to see. And pro, full color battle maps and fun cartoonish art throughout. There's a lot of pros. Cons, really the only one I had, because I didn't want to necessarily include the con about the quantity over quality for the mutiny characters, because I do still feel like it's a good idea and it's well executed and there's a lot there. I just feel like maybe a little bit more could have been expanded, but I'm not including that as a con. The only one I really did include as a con is the Dark Lake encounters here. I just feel like that's kind of a low point of the otherwise stellar adventure. If they're failing multiple skill challenges, I do not want to throw a bunch of random encounters on the players. I'd want to mix it up with some other thing. So either some kind of traps involved, or just, save for exhaustion or those kind of things, rather than just running all these random encounters. Final verdict, the Shanty of Boldbeard's Pride begins with a game of Liar's Dice and ends with a mutiny in the Sunless Sea and a dungeon excursion that would make the Goonies proud. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson, and you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.